Okay, we shall start now. So here is a definition of, it is very similar to linearly independent. This one is called affine independent. If you have a set of points P0, P1 to Pk in, it's a set, and you say this set is affine independent if P1 minus P0, P2 minus P0, Pk minus P0 is linearly independent. That's when we say it is affine independent. Otherwise, it is called affine dependent. Okay, so when you have an affine independent set P0, P1, Pk, okay, finite, okay, then the convex hull of that affine independent set is called a simplex of dimension k. I should tell you something. Let me say something like, take 3 points. These are 3 points. Now, so you can call this as P0. This is your P0. This is P1. This is P2. So when you take the difference P1 minus P0, so P1 minus P0 will be this vector, and P2 minus P0 will be this vector. Okay, and they will be linearly independent. Okay, because they are two different. They are not on the same line. Okay, so just excuse the. I am trying to straight line draw a straight line, but it is okay. And so that is what it is saying. It is saying that in that case, it will say P0, P1, and P2 are affinely independent, because P1 minus P0 and P2 minus P0, these two are linearly independent. And when that happens, then the convex hull of these 3 points, this will be called as a simplex of dimension 2. Okay, so a simplex of dimension 2 basically means a triangle, closed triangular plate. And similarly, a simplex of dimension 1 would be just a closed interval, and a simplex of dimension 3 would be something like a tetrahedron. Okay, and you will have another one that will be joined to all of them. That's tetrahedrons. Okay, so in example, you can see like E1, E2, E3, they are affine independent. That's fine. 0, E1, E2, that is also affine independent. And if we are having our favorite set, remember our favorite set was like this: 0, and then E1 and E2. E2 is this, and this is E1 plus E2. This is E1 plus E2. So this is affine dependent, because if you take E1 minus E0, so like 0, so that's E1, and then E2 and E1 plus E2, this is linearly dependent. So that's why it is. Okay, so this is your 0, this is E1, this is E2. And if you consider these vectors, these 3 vectors are linearly dependent. So basically, this set is affine dependent. So point is regarded as a 0-dimensional simplex. A closed line segment is 1-dimensional simplex. Closed triangular plate is a 2-dimensional simplex. And why am I talking about simplex? Because this is the simplex of simplex algorithm, that algorithm which one uses to solve linear programming problems. That's what we are going to see the development. Okay, what about this affine independent? Basically, there is nothing. See what happens if you are looking at a hyperplane. So in R3, you imagine a plane. Imagine what plane? Now something like, imagine a plane that does not pass through origin, and z-axis is here, here to top. Okay, z-axis is here, that passes through 3 points E1, E2, E3. So that will be the plane that is x plus y plus z equal to 1. Okay, so that is one affine. It's a plane. Okay, affine plane. Now there are 3 points E1, E2, E3 in this plane, and there, to tell that they are affine independent, it basically means when you translate that to I mean, if you try to view them, these 3 points, if you try to view them like this triangle, if you try to view them as collection of vectors and making yourself standing at one corner, one point, okay, and if you see these vectors are linearly independent, that's when you say it is affine independent. So this is the same thing. It's just because of translation. Okay, these two are very easy to prove due to the translation. One is this 3.4. What it says? Now it says the set P0, P1 to Pk is affine dependent if and only if some Pi is an affine combination of the remaining. This is very similar to linear dependence. A set P0, P1 to Pk is linearly dependent if some Pi is a linear combination of the remaining. That's the same thing. And very similar to 3.5, it is similar to linear independence. What says? It says that the set P0, P1 to Pk is affine independent if each x in the affine space generated by S can be written as an affine combination of Pi in a unique way. This is very similar to the linear independence, which says that a set S P0, P1 to Pk is linearly independent if every x, if and only if, right? This if. Every point in the span can be written as an affine combination of, as a linear combination of Pi's in a unique way. So that is, the unique representation with respect to the basis. So as a corollary, what you have, remember that the affine space generated by S contains the convex hull of S. The affine space is like affine, all affine combinations, and all affine combination means the sum of the coefficients has to be 1. In particular, if you have the coefficients are also non-negative with sum of the coefficients equal to 1, that is a convex combination. And the convex hull is just a collection of convex combinations. So in particular, what you are seeing now, if you have a set S P0, P1 to Pk affine independent, then each element in the convex hull of S can be written as a convex combination of these Pi's in a unique way. Okay. So that is a particular corollary. So this much of affine independence concept. We will have to proceed further. Just 1 or 2 exercises to do that. We'll go to another concept that is called the vertex. Okay, vertex, and we'll also talk about the hyperplane. What is if you have a convex set, what is called a vertex? Now if I have a convex set, something, if you have a convex set somewhere, and suppose that if you have a point X which can be written as some convex combination of 2 other points, then this point X is not a vertex. Okay, so what is a vertex? The negation of this thing. So what does it say? It says if it is a vertex, it is a vertex if it is not on any open line segment. So that basically means you cannot find 2 distinct points A, B and a lambda such that X is a convex combination of that, like X is equal to lambda A plus 1 minus lambda B. You cannot find such 2 points. So if that happens, then X is called a vertex. So equivalently, it means X does not belong to the convex hull of S minus X. Remember, this is very similar to the linear, dependence kind of a, independence kind of a thing. Okay, so if you have so if you have a set S, and then you are selecting a point Y which is not in the span of S, then whatever linear independent, if you have a linear independent subset of S, so S is linearly independent, assume, then this Y union S becomes linearly independent. That kind of a thing will come from here. So anyway, that is unrelated. Okay, so I was talking about vertex. Vertex means it is a point, it is a corner like a structure. Okay, and it basically means you cannot write X as a convex combination of 2 points different from X. That's what it is. Okay, so if you are looking at some 2 points A and B, and you are looking at the closed line segment, then the combination 0.1 of A and 0.9 of B, okay, somewhere here, this point is definitely not a vertex, because you can, this point can be written as a convex combination of A and B. Definitely, if not A and B, you can take another point from here, just from right, and take another point from here, and using section formula you can express this point X as a convex combination. Okay, so that is no problem. What is this fact? The fact is that if you are looking at convex hull of S, then the vertices of the convex hull of S must be elements of S only. Why? Now look, I have a set S and I generated all the convex combinations of points of S, and that's how I have got the convex hull. Well, if you are seeing one point in the convex hull which is not a point of S, how have we got this? Now you have got it as a convex combination of some points. Well, if you have got it a convex combination of some points, then you might have got it something like this. This is equal to some lambda 1 S1 plus lambda k sk. Okay, here lambda 1, lambda k, they are all positive numbers summing up to 1. If that is the case, you can always write it as like lambda 1 S1 plus, here you start from lambda 2 S2 plus up to lambda k sk divided by lambda 2 plus lambda k, and then multiply it with 1 minus lambda 1. So 1 minus lambda 1 is actually lambda 2, lambda 3, all this lambda 2 plus lambda 3 plus lambda k, because you had lambda 1 plus lambda k that was equal to 1. So what you are seeing now, okay, S1 is a point of S. And what about lambda 2 S2 plus lambda k sk divided by lambda 2 this plus lambda 3 up to lambda k? Now that is also a convex combination of S2 to sk. And therefore this also belongs to convex hull, like the convex hull of S. And S1 is already in convex hull of S. So what I am doing now, I am writing X as a convex combination, lambda 1 convex combination of 2 points of convex hull of S. Therefore X cannot be a vertex of convex hull of S. So that is what it is saying. Any point other than the points of S cannot be a vertex of the convex hull. And not all points of S will be vertices, but some of them will be. So for example, our favorite set can have only because our favorite set is convex hull of 0, E1, E2, E1 plus E2. It can have only 4 vertices and it has exactly 4 vertices. It has exactly 4 corners, right? This was our favorite set. Okay, but I could, for example, take S to be 0, E1, E2, E1 plus E2. That was our favorite set, and also E1 plus E2 divided by 2, which is this point also. Their convex hull will also be the same picture, but this one will not be a vertex. This point will not be a vertex. Only the vertices are 0, E1, E2, and E1 plus E2. So not every point of S will be a vertex, but points outside S are definitely not vertices. Okay. And here is a theorem. What it says? It says that if you have an affine independent set, so theorem 3.20, if you have an affine independent set P0, P1 up to Pk, these are affinely independent, then Pi's are precisely the vertices. Okay, they are precisely the vertices of the convex hull. Okay, so this is just one way. It is saying if you have an affine independent set S P0 S equal to P0, P1, Pk, then if you are looking at convex hull of S, then the vertices are precisely P0, P1, P2, Pk. This can also happen even when S is not affine independent. For example, here you had E0, E1, so this is like 0, E1, E2, E1 plus E2, and the convex hull had these 4 points as vertices. However, these 4 points were not affine independent. They were affine dependent because the vector E1 minus 0, E2 minus 0, E1 plus E2 minus 0, they are linearly dependent. Okay. And so here you see the proofs are very easy, but I do not intend, I may not tell, many a time I don't have time to tell. Here, the footnote says that the proofs are given here. Those who are interested, you can read. Sometimes I will tell the proofs. Okay, let me. So therefore, using this particular theorem, it follows that a closed triangular plate has 3 vertices. So if I am taking a closed triangular plate, because these 3 points, if I take these 3 points as P0, P1, P2, then they are affinely independent, as we have seen. And according to 3.20, it says if you have an affine independent set, then convex, and you are looking at the convex hull, then that has precisely those many vertices. PIs, the PIs are the vertices. It says that. But it does not say, this particular theorem does not say anything about our favorite set, because our favorite set was affine dependent. It only says that, in fact, the previous result only says that the vertices will be from S only. How many points from S? It doesn't say anything. Okay. A non-empty convex cone may not have a vertex. For example, if you take the whole Rn itself, it's a convex set and it is a cone. Cone, remember, by definition, it means whenever you have a non-zero point in the cone, then any non-negative multiple of that point should be in that set. So Rn satisfies that, so Rn is a cone. But Rn does not have a vertex. So it is not that every convex cone, non-empty convex cone, should have a vertex. But when it has only one, and it has to be the point 0. Okay. This is because if you have a non-zero point x in the cone, then by definition of the cone, half x and 3/2 of x, they will be available in that cone. But in that case, X is the midpoint of this. That is, X is a convex combination of these 2 points. So X cannot be a vertex. So the only vertex possible is 0. Okay. Okay. Now we'll come to the definition of hyperplane. What is a hyperplane? Now, hyperplane is like kind of affine structure of n-1 dimensional subspaces. See, when you are talking about a subspace must pass through a region, right? That is what it is. So, for example, in R3, if you are looking at, or even let me say R2, so it is easier to show. Suppose I have R2, and then I have a line somewhere. I draw one line. Okay. So what is that? Now that is a translated n-1 dimensional subspace. Okay. So those are called hyperplane. So what is a hyperplane? Now whenever it is the set of all, oh, so here it is written, it is the set of all x such that, so there is a given vector C which is non-zero. C transpose X is equal to alpha. This should satisfy. So what is it? Now it is given C not equal to 0 and alpha some real number. Then this one is called a hyperplane. See, if I put C transpose X equal to 0 instead of alpha, if I take alpha equal to 0, what am I seeing? Now I am seeing the orthogonal complement of the vector C, the subspace that is orthogonal to the vector C. And in Rn, that is a subspace of dimension n-1. Okay. So for example, in R3, a hyperplane means a simple plane. In R2, a hyperplane means a line. In R1, a point is a hyperplane. And so in Rn, if n is greater than 1, and okay, when alpha is equal to 0, it is called a linear hyperplane. Linear hyperplane, I think the name has come from linear subspaces. I mean, sometimes the vector spaces are also called vector spaces over R or C are called linear spaces also. Some old traditional texts would use that name. Okay. So 3.25, this is a fact. Any linear hyperplane in Rn is an n-1 dimensional subspace. This is talking about linear. That means any set X of the form C transpose, any set of the form X such that C transpose X equal to 0. This is an n-1 dimensional subspace. It follows. I mean, it is very well known from linear algebra. Straight away follows by first starting with C as C is a non-zero vector. So first starting as C as a linearly independent set and extending it to an orthonormal basis. To an orthonormal basis. In that case, this C perp, that is the perpendicular, that will be the span of the remaining vectors in the extension. When you extend it to a basis. Okay, that's okay. And therefore it is isomorphic to Rn-1. I mean, any two vector spaces over R which have dimension n-1, they are isomorphic of the same dimension. Okay. Any hyperplane in Rn, any hyperplane, talking about that, in Rn is a translated linear hyperplane. That part is fine because normally hyperplane means these are the set of points x such that C transpose x equal to alpha. So it is translated. Translated by what? Translated by any point of that hyperplane. Okay. So it is an affine subspace. Okay, affine subspace means a translated subspace. But remember that when I am saying hyperplane, I am meaning that it is a translated subspace of dimension n-1. Whereas in general, if we talk affine subspace, they need not be they may be translations of subspaces of any dimension. Okay, they can have dimension other than n-1. Okay, now it is easy to see that if you have okay, normally this is the way we would be writing. We would be writing as H colon C transpose X equal to alpha to mean a hyperplane. This is a hyperplane. Okay, this is a hyperplane. So there it is always meant that C is a non-zero vector, alpha is some fixed real number, C is also fixed given. So that is what it is. And if you want to find the distance from 0 to this hyperplane, this is alpha mod by C norm. This part you also know from your linear algebra days or maybe even the +2 days. The idea is the same. Argument is written over there in the footnote if you, for those who want to see. Okay, now you say some hyperplanes. Suppose that I am looking at hyperplanes hi are given as Ci transpose X equal to alpha I and I running from 1 to k. Okay, these I running from 1 to k. So I have some k hyperplanes. I call them k linearly independent hyperplanes if they are normals. These are the normals. Okay, C1 to Ck, if that is linearly independent. So basically, if this set is linearly independent, I say these hyperplanes are linearly independent. Okay, for example, if I take x minus the hyperplanes x minus y equal to 1 and 2x plus y equal to 8. So the normals that I have over here is like for the first one, let me do it here. So the first one is C is what? C transpose. So this is 1 minus 1 xy, that is equal to 1. So this is the first C. And the second one is, okay, this is C transpose actually. Normally we write vectors in the column format. Xy equal to 8. Okay, since these two vectors are linearly independent, so these two are linearly independent. Whereas if I am talking about the parallel planes x minus y equal to 1 and x minus y equal to 2, they are not linearly independent because they have the same C. Okay, now whenever you have a hyperplane, that hyperplane will divide the whole space into two parts. So they are called half spaces. The part that satisfies, so here below. So the part that satisfies, so whenever you have a hyperplane, that hyperplane will divide the whole set into two parts. So the one that will satisfy that, so what is called H plus, now H plus is the set of all x such that, so what is H? First, it is dependent on what you have written as H. So I should write C transpose X equal to alpha. I have written in this way. If I have written in this way, then H plus is equal to set of all x such that C transpose X is greater than equal to alpha. So this is called the positive closed half space. And then H minus, that is very similar, C transpose X less than equal to alpha. This is the negative closed half space. Open half space would mean that C transpose X here, instead of greater than equal to alpha, you would have greater than alpha. Okay, those kind of things. So for example, in R2, if I am taking C is equal to this 1 minus 1 transpose, so like C is equal to that, in that case the hyperplane is nothing but x1 minus x2 equal to 0. Okay, so that is this. And if I am saying so here I have taken alpha equal to 0, and what is then H plus? H plus would be that x1 minus x2 greater than equal to 0. That means x1 is greater than equal to x2. That is how it is. Okay, so x1 would be greater than equal to x2. That is this part, that is H plus, and then H minus would be this part, that is this one. But instead of that, if I write the hyperplane as H is equal to minus x1 plus x2 equal to 0. It is the same hyperplane, but the way I have written C, depending on what is my C, then H plus and H minus will change. Here I am taking C as minus 1, 1. Okay, this is the C transpose that I am taking. So H plus and H minus will change. Okay. Okay. Hyperplanes and half spaces are always convex. Linear hyperplane, linear closed half spaces are convex cones. These are easy to show. Some exercise, this one is very good. This one you should always do. And the rest of them, I mean, you do, I mean, it is your choice. The more exercises you do, the more benefit you get. The plus exercises are some exercises that I would be needing in future discussions. Okay. Okay. We need a little bit of some subsets. Whenever you have two subsets C and D, okay, then we define alpha times C, where alpha is a real number. Alpha times C is the set of all alpha x belonging to C. You must have seen this earlier also. And C plus D is defined in this way. C plus D defined in this way, you must have seen earlier when you were defining sums of two vector spaces. You must have defined it like in this way. Alpha C you might not have seen, but this is the way we are going to do. Just one simple warning: C plus C is not 2C. That may not be correct. For example, if I take C equal to E1 comma E2, just 2 points, then according to C plus C, what is this? Now C plus C should be x plus y such that x, y belong to C, right? So in that case, you will have E1 plus E1, E1 plus E2, E2 plus E1, but then that is the same because I am writing as a set, and E2 plus E2. Whereas, had I taken 2C according to this definition, 2C would have been 2E1 and 2E2. Okay, so this is not equal to this. However, this one is more interesting. It says, look, the C that I considered here was not convex. If you have C convex, then C plus C equal to 2C. That can be shown, and it is easy also. Okay. So here is something. Suppose that I am looking at the point of the form 0y, and y belong to 0 to 1. So this is the set that I have, this set. Okay. And then I want to add it with, so this is the first set, this is your C, and this is your D. And this set is x comma 0, x belonging to 0 to 1. So 0 0 to 1 0, this one is 0 0 to 0 1. If I add them, what do I get? Now I will get our favorite set, that is y. Now look, this one is 0 0 to 0 1, that is fine. I just want to add it with the point half comma 0. Now if I add it with a point half comma 0, that means it is a translation. Every point over here will get translated to half comma 0. Every point will get translated to half unit right, every point. So what I will be getting? I will be getting this image. If I translate it by 1/3 0, then I will be getting this line. So for every x0, x belonging to 0 to 1, I will get this whole thing, all these points. So this is how you have got. Okay. Okay. When CD are convex and lambda is any real number, it is very easy to show that lambda C, C closure, and C plus D, all of these are convex. So these are easy to show. Okay. Just remember that part. Okay. A major theorem in this is Carathéodory theorem. Okay. So why do we need Carathéodory theorem? Now Carathéodory theorem will be used to show that a polytope is closed. Polytope, automatically it will follow that polytope is compact, because polytope is always a bounded set. And that will be used to prove that a polytope is a bounded polyhedron. Okay. What are polytope and polyhedron? I will come, and that result will be used to prove something called Farkas lemma, which is very fundamental in any optimization technique theory. I mean, anything you tell, Farkas lemma is very important. Why? Now, for example, it has many applications. For example, it will be used to show the existence of generalized Lagrange multipliers in nonlinear optimization. You must have heard about Lagrange multipliers for sure. Okay. Coming to the definition of a polytope is the convex hull of some finitely many points, non-empty. I mean, just do not take empty set. Take some finitely many points and take its convex hull. Whatever you get is a polytope. A triangle is a polytope. Just take any arbitrary 5-6 points. Whatever is the convex hull, it is a polytope. Now, what is a polyhedron? Now, polyhedron, on the other hand, is the intersection of finitely many closed half spaces. Okay, it's a non-empty finite intersection of a non-empty finite class of closed half spaces. Okay, for example, whether our favorite set is a polytope? Now yes, our favorite set is a polytope because it is a convex hull of 0, E1, E2, E1 plus E2, and E1 plus E2 by 2 also. It is a finite set. Anyway, it is a convex hull. Is it a polyhedron? Now yes, it is a polyhedron. For example, it is intersection of the set of all x half space x less than equal to 1. This is the set of, sorry, I should say x1 less than equal to 1, the first coordinate, and intersection the set of all x such that x1 greater than equal to 0, intersection the set of all x such that x2 less than equal to 1, that is this side, x2 less than equal to 1 is this bottom side, everything. Intersection the set of all x such that x2 greater than equal to 0. So you can write our favorite set as intersection of 4 closed half spaces, and that's why our favorite set is also a polyhedron. It's a polytope, it is a polyhedron. Now what does Carathéodory theorem says? Carathéodory theorem says, suppose that you have a set S, finite or infinite? No, I don't know. You have your set. You may choose an infinite set if you want. Now look at the convex hull. Pause for a moment and say, what is the convex hull of an infinite set? What infinite set or finite set? Convex hull always means you take all possible convex combinations of points of S. Whatever you get, that is convex hull. Doesn't matter whether your set is infinite or finite. Okay, so I am looking at the convex hull, and I choose a point X from the convex hull. Choose a point X from the convex hull. Okay. Now I am wondering, okay, this is a point from the convex hull. So either it is straight away a point from S, or it is definitely a convex combination of some points of S. So now how many points would I require if I want to express this as a convex combination of points of S? Carathéodory theorem says you can always write this X as a convex combination by choosing at most n+1 points from S. There exists some n+1 points in S such that X is a convex combination of those n+1 points. That's what Carathéodory theorem says. Okay, so the proof is given here. I can tell a little bit. Wait a minute. Okay, I can tell that proof. Now, so proof is by induction. Many, like you will see many examples where induction is so helpful. Okay, by contradiction and induction. So suppose that we have a set S. We have looked at we have the convex hull of S, and suppose that this statement is not true. So therefore, we have a point X. We have got a point X in this convex hull for which we require more than n+1 points in order to write it as a convex combination. Now, since we require more than n+1 points, let us choose the minimum. So in that case, suppose such that it cannot be written as a convex combination of at most n+1 points. So say suppose, and of course it belongs to the convex hull. This means it can be written as convex combination of some many points. So let m be the smallest number. So let m, which is bigger than n+1, be the smallest, such that x is equal to lambda 1 x1 plus lambda m xm, okay, where these lambda i's are positive, they belong to 0, 1, and the sum is I running from 1 to m. Sum is equal to 1. Okay. Why I am taking lambda I belong to 0, 1? Well, if some lambda I is 0, then why am I writing it here? Okay. So that is fine. So what is the value of m? Now m is greater than equal to n plus 2. Okay. So then what you do, now you form a matrix, capital X, by writing x1 here as a column, x2 here as a column, and xm here as a column. So what is this matrix? Now look. Each vector x1, see these are elements in Rn. Okay. So the number of rows is n and the number of columns is m, which is greater than equal to n plus 2. Therefore, the nullity of x will be at least 2. Okay. Rank can at best be n, and therefore the null space will have dimension at least 2. And because the null space will have dimension at least 2, there will exist, it is very easy to show, some previous exercise it is written. There are 3 ways to show that. There exists a vector in the null space of x. There exists a vector w such that in the null space of x such that the sum of the entries of in the null space and a non-trivial vector, 0 vector to always hoga. I mean, it's you have to take a non-zero vector, w1 plus w2, sum of the entries wm will be equal to 0. Now this is a non-trivial vector and the sum of the entry is equal to 0, so there will be at least one positive entry. Okay. Now what you do, so and by the way, this is in the null space. In the null space of x, it means that w1, w belongs to null space. X, this means w1 times x1 w1 times x1 plus wm times xm is equal to 0. Just the matrix multiplication. This is equal to 0. So what you do, now you write it here. 0 w1 times x1 plus wm times xm. And you remember that there are some positive entries among the wi's and the others are negative. Now what you do, so lambda 1 to lambda m, they are also positive. Some wi's are positive. Now what you do, you subtract a good multiple of this, so that in the result at least one entry becomes 0 among these lambdas. Suppose lambda is positive, lambda 1 is positive and w1 is positive. Just try to take the ratio. You will have to take the minimum ratio, of course, so such that, so what you are having now, you will be having lambda 1 minus alpha w1 x1 plus lambda m minus alpha wm x m, and this is equal to the same x again. And if you choose alpha very carefully, because some wi's are positive, you will be able to make one of these entries, at least one of these entries, 0. So in that, and further, what is the sum of the entries of w? Now sum of the entries of w was 0, and therefore what will be the sum of these entries of this combination? Now this combination, sum of the entries will also remain 1. Earlier it was 1, it will remain 1. Whether all the coefficients are greater than equal to 0? Yes. By choosing alpha carefully, you have kept all of them are greater than equal to 0, and just made at least one entry 0. So in that case, what you are seeing, Now you are able to write X as again a convex combination of one less, at least one less vectors, and that will contradict that M was the smallest. That will contradict this. Okay, so a detailed proof is written over here. You can read that part. So what is an application? So an application of this, for example, you can show that if S is compact, in particular when S is a finite set is always compact, right? Closed and bounded. If S is compact, then the convex hull of S is compact. That's an application of the Carathéodory theorem. The proof is given over here. You can always write, it follows from here only, that the convex hull of S can be obtained by gathering this kind of combinations. What are these kind of combinations? See, Carathéodory theorem said that every point of convex hull of S can be seen as a convex combination of at most n+1 points. So then what you do now, why don't you see S cross S cross S cross S n+1 times? So, and given any n+1 tuple from here, you take some alpha 1 to lambda 1 to lambda n-1 and create a convex combination and gather it. So that's what it does. It creates all lambda I xi I running from 1 to n+1 such that lambda I, they belong to 0, 1, summation lambda I equal to 1, and xi are chosen from S. Now what is this set? This is actually, these are called the probability vectors, right? Okay. Just like the triangular plate in R3 joining E1, E2, E3. Every vector there is just a probability vector. Every point, for example, you will have 0.1, 0.2, 0.7, a point on that triangular plate. That's a probability vector. Entries are greater than equal to 0 and summation is equal to 1. This is called probability vectors. Okay. So, and this set is compact. Okay. And since this set is compact, so this function, not this set is compact, this particular set. Yeah. So this particular set that I am talking about, S n+1 and Cartesian product Pn+1, the probability vectors. This set is compact, and you are defining a function f from this to this as f of S1, S2, Sn+1, comma lambda 1 to lambda n+1 equal to this. And that is a continuous. In fact, you don't need this inside these brackets. You can delete them. That is fine. So from this order, this thing you would, so this is a linear function. Okay. And so it is a continuous function, and a continuous image of a compact set is compact. That you already know from your calculus stage. So that's how it will come out to be compact. Okay. In particular, a polytope is a closed set. So polytope being the convex hull of finitely many points, non-empty, finitely many points. So S is compact, and therefore the convex hull of S is also compact. That means closed and bounded. So that's the thing. So then there are some exercises. Yeah. Okay. So I will stop here. In case you want to ask, you have 5 minutes, you can ask anything. Hello? Am I audible or not?
Yes, sir,
You're audible, sir.
Okay. I thought you people have left or something. You have some doubt, you ask. Otherwise, we can stop.
मैं नहीं कर रही.
Okay, let me ask. I like these are small questions normally I ask you people. Anybody say, suppose that I have 5 points in R20. So okay, R20, and I am looking at 5 points, and I take a convex all of them. Okay. So how many vertices can it have?
At most 5.
At most 5. Can you give one example that it has only 2 vertices?
If one of the points is 0, everything 0, and the other point is a unit vector in any direction.
And taking them distinct points, you can take them actually on a line segment.
Yes, sir,
So
exactly.
only the end 2 points will remain, that will become the vertex. Okay, so that means you are listening. Okay, good. Anything else that you want to ask? Well, then we stop here.